And good morning, everybody. Hey, Mary.
Hello.
Hey, Justin. How you doing today?
Good. How you doing?
All right. We have a pretty, I'll say, I don't know if exciting is the right term, but one that
I'm excited. I like it.
I get excited about these things. This one's a pretty interesting stream about something that we promote really heavily across all of our clients and just all of our social and training is multi-factor authentication. Last week we did one about one-time passwords, and we want to continue that kind of theme with one-time time-based one-time passwords, which are way more familiar to most folks and much easier to use, and the ones that we really recommend across all when we talk about multi-factor. So before we start, thank you for joining us today, everyone. Thank you for liking and subscribing. We have this up is all on YouTube. Check it out. It's on our live stream page. We have a lot of content there. We also have put the recording of our really, I think, our best to date security webinar with Scout, and it has some super well put together information presented by the Scout team. I feel like I learned something walking away from that. I kind of do this all day, so it's really pretty exciting. And don't forget, everyone out there, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Do your part, stay cyber smart. It sounds just can't get it in your head. So cyber smart, do your part. All right, little kind of words there. And please check it out at staysafeonline.org. It's a great organization that has all the information about uh, things you can do in your both business and personal life to
Mhm.
stay safe online. Now with that, Justin, Marion, what's time-based authentication? How's it work?
Yeah.
Dive
So,
into it.
last week we were talking about one-time codes where you get the one-time code from text or email. And time-based one-time codes are very similar in that it's a one-time code, usually, a series of six numbers, but you don't get it from email or from text. You get it from an app that you have preloaded onto your phone or your computer, or even if you remember those old keychain RSA keychain tokens that had the little LCD screen on it,
Mm-hmm.
that's the same idea, is that it's a passcode that's being generated automatically. You don't have to receive it. And the way that they work is actually pretty clever. It uses two different pieces of information to make that code. And
Right.
one of them, like the name suggests, is the time. It's time based. So it uses whatever the current time is, runs it through a complicated, we'll just call it, runs it through math, does math, with a uh, a, a secret, basically a pre-shared password that you have when you set it up. And this is a password. It's a long series of numbers, or more commonly now, it's a QR code.
Right.
So when you go to set these up, you familiar, point the camera at your QR code. That QR code is the secret. The time is the something that everybody has to verify, and it runs it through this math to come up with that number. And it does it in such a way so that the math is very complicated, so that you can never use those numbers that you get to generate what the secret is. The secret is
Right.
is the pass key, and it generates that code.
Mhm.
Right. So now you have this kind of fairly secure, you know, one-time password, shared
Mhm.
secrets, easy way to get things past people. Um, from there, what happens then? Like, what's the
Yeah.
next step?
So if you remember, we were talking previously in the past few streams about the different factors that make up multi-factor: what you
Right.
have, what you know, who you are, biometrics being the who you are, fingerprint scan, those sorts of things, face recognition, uh, passwords being what you know the password. This falls into the what you have. It
Mhm.
is because
Right.
you have the authenticator token or the app that's set up. It's a separate code that you have. So that's your second factor. And
Gotcha.
very similar to the one-time codes you get through text and email, except that it is instant. You go to
Yeah.
log in, the page says, "Okay, put in your code," and you just copy your code down from your app. It's just got the numbers that change usually every 30 seconds. Put the numbers in and log in, and it can verify you that way. So
Yeah,
much faster.
And much more convenient if you're logging in on your phone. A lot of the time, it'll just automatically take the number because
Hmm.
smartphone is smart. Um, but also, like you said, you don't have to wait for the text message. I actually was signing up just for like a free video game last night, and I was waiting for the code to come through. Meanwhile, it's counting down until it expires. I'm like, no, please come through. Whereas when I log into a lot of the things that have the time-based one-time password, I just go, okay, this is a 6-digit number. Pick up my
Right.
phone, check it out.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's
So with
also a benefit to the time-based one, and you don't run into this a lot anymore because everything is online and you have connection. But if you were setting up something that had no internet connection whatsoever, you could use a time-based one-time code
right.
because you don't need an internet connection to generate that code. It's generated from the app itself, from information that's already on it.
Yeah.
Very cool. So okay, now we have this kind of time-based thing. What's the mechanism to get you these things? What are the applications, or what's the kind of nuts and bolts logistics of it?
Yeah, sure. So there's a bunch of different apps that are out there. They all kind of work the same way. They have other pieces to them that we'll get into in a little bit later. But for the most part, the big players there are Microsoft has one, the Microsoft Authenticator. Google has one, the Google Authenticator.
Hmm.
There are others that are not specific to that, like to a provider. Authy is one, I believe,
Right.
is uh, uh, Twilio owns them. I forget who owns them, but Authy is one. There's one that's free OTP. The idea is
Right.
that the apps themselves, the what they're doing in the background is kind of standardized. So there's
Right.
lots of different providers for it,
Yeah.
and we're gonna have I think a blog post that's gonna run into like all the details of them and links out to them and pros and
Yeah.
cons and those sorts of things.
Very nuts and bolts. So like
Yeah.
why you'd use each one here and that sort of thing.
But the
So
idea with it is the same for all of them. When you go to set up your account, it'll ask you to scan a QR code. You scan the QR code with your phone. That QR code is the secret. Uh, if you if the app that you're using doesn't have a mechanism to back up your QR codes, if it's just in one place, what you can do is print out that code, or it'll
right.
give you a string, print that out, put that in place where you keep your safe documents, and that becomes a backup for your one-time password.
Right.
So, a great example, I have my fireproof safe. I've got a printout of my Google MFA. If something happens to my, Google account and I need to set it up somewhere else, I can use that to log back in and then reset from there. So you can use
I
that.
know that was a big deal recently. It was the recent update to Google Authenticator was you're allowed to like back it up and restore it
Hmm.
to a new device.
Yeah.
In the past, it was like I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know how many you have as if you anywhere near as many I have. That's a
That's
lot of that's a lot of one-time passwords, and
yeah.
some things don't always work with Google, so we have a couple of different ones. I know that we end up using just because of the nature of the work we do. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's a real pain to reset them up if you need
Yeah.
access to them.
Yeah,
And
I
that.
mean, but
Mhm.
you make a good point. I have multiple ones on my phone, but part of that's because I do demos for people on how to set
Right.
this stuff up. And it's good to just keep in mind that if you have a Microsoft and a Google account, you don't necessarily need both authenticators because the Microsoft Authenticator does more than just Microsoft. You can set up your
Correct.
Twitter to
Mhm.
it, you can set up your Google
Hmm.
account to it. Because I actually, yeah, that's how I have it set up. Is that one of the authenticators on my phone has pretty much everything, and then the other ones
Right.
are for demo purposes. But um, if you're like us, you might end up with multiple, but generally you can just use one for all
Yes.
your accounts that allow that.
Mhm.
They all use the same basic, uh, I said, mechanism
Yeah.
to deliver the code.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and and there's also ones that you don't need to do all the ways, right, Justin?
Right,
Hmm.
and that's yeah, the one that I've been using for a while, or one of the ones I've been using for a while is Authy, and the draw for me when I first started using that was they have a desktop app, and what it does is it's similar to like LastPass or other password managers. You put in a password for it, and it encrypts your all those QR code keys and lets you install it on multiple phones or on your desktop. So I have it in more than one place. It's a trade-off on security versus risk with that because if I have it on my machine and somebody gets onto my machine and they figure out my password for Authy, there's a chance that they could log into things. I have taken the stance on it as that's an acceptable risk because the number of things that somebody would have to do to get to that point, they've probably already gotten access to those things. The password for my Authy is not the same as anything else. It's unique and not stored, secured and stored in a place that it's not accessible. So it's trade-off there. But if you're worried about security, you may not want to do that. You may want to keep it in one place on one device where it only exists in that one place. Or if it's something very, needs to be offline or super secure, you may want to do that. Or even use like a hardware token that's not on a phone.
Right.
So that's
Right.
another balance between like the risk, convenience, and what's acceptable, because
Mhm.
it's very convenient to have it on your computer because you can just plug those in. You can have it on two places, so you don't have to worry about the backup. But there is a slight more risk, but like you said, it's encrypted, so it depends on if you determine that to be an acceptable risk or not.
Exactly. And you really have to be also sometimes when you have these apps, you can store the or authorize the computer for 30 days, which is once again is a balance of risk
Mhm.
because sometimes if someone gets into your computer in a 30-day period, they have access to that
Yeah.
application. So which is definitely something to keep in mind. We have a question from our loyal question asker, Mr. Stephen Kaup. Hi, Steph. I heard that cell number masking is in order to basically MFA hack an account. So is an app-based MFA like Auth or MSFT Authenticator much better?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Resounding yes. Yes.
Let's
It
mention
is.
what cell number masking
Sure.
is. So the
Mhm.
problem there is that if you get sent a text message code as a one-time password, the cell network makes it so that it's possible for someone else to also receive that text message, and then they can log into your account. So obviously then you can
Right.
explain why time-based one-time passwords doesn't do that. It's because you have to physically have the phone
Mhm.
or
Correct.
the device that the Authenticator app is on.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's much more secure. It's scalable. Text messages are convenient, but SMS is really no longer considered a
Mhm.
truly viable multi-factor solution.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, text messages are good if you don't have a smartphone, but again, you can get the computer-based one-time password or
Mhm.
time-based one-time password
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
as an
Or
alternative.
the hardware tokens as well.
Yep.
If you
Full
really need
key.
to be secure, you can do that. The
Yep.
um, there's also with time-based one-time passwords being secure, there's also another level that these apps will do a lot of times, and that is push notifications, where
Yes.
it bypasses the need for code altogether. And those are probably the most convenient and in some ways the most secure
Right.
of it because you're not entering anything in. Let's see if I can actually show you what it looks like. I don't know if you guys can see or watch here,
Yeah,
but
there
I've
it
got
is.
the I tried to log into my Microsoft account and it pops up with do you want to approve this login? And you just get the option of deny or accept, and I'll
Mhm.
hit approve. Try
Which
to get
again,
it.
you could do on your phone. You don't need a
You can do it on
smartwatch.
your phone too, yeah.
But
No,
that's
it's
He's
much
just really
easier on your
cool.
phone. I just
He's just showing
it's
us a little
just
geek cred. So
yeah.
cool. It's just
It's
cool.
it
it's
is very
cool to
cool.
do it on your because then I don't have to take my phone out of my pocket. But
Yeah.
exactly that.
Yes.
You go to log in, you get that prompt, you just hit approve,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that is in addition to Microsoft doing that for Office 365. Google does that for Google Workplace. You'll notice apps like Facebook do that. If you have the Facebook app on your phone and you go to log in, you'll get the
Mhm.
prompt. Are you sure this was you? And in some cases, for certain things, especially the social media sites like Facebook, the uh, the prompt that comes up is not always to let you in. Sometimes it's just to notify you that, hey, somebody logged in. Was this approved? You're already
Mhm.
logged in and doing stuff, but at least it's letting you know. And with that, you can then retroactively, like no, decline, and it'll log everybody out
Right.
and secure your account from there. But you do get more control over how you can interact with it because it's not just enter in that code. It's an active, you get the message. The the downside to it is you do have to have an internet connection. So
Right.
this works really well for anything that's online, but if you're doing something like logging into a workstation, you don't always have that option because if you're offline, you can't run it. You have to fail
Sure.
back to the one-time code.
Right. And I think many of them have mechanisms for doing both. So,
Mhm.
Yep.
which is hard. So, and for convenience, and I know when we deploy MFA, we always try to push people towards the push notifications. And
Mhm.
I'm sorry for
Yeah.
that. I apologize. Cunning.
I mean, it
Yeah.
is more convenient. And then also it does prevent against a specific phishing attack where people will call and be like, okay, so you've entered that. Now, can you give me the one-time password that you have?
Right.
And if you offer up that information, they would be able to log in, but you can't offer up it's a
Code.
Yep,
button. So,
that
Right.
is, a common tactic for phishing attempts where you'll go to a fake login site and the fake login site will actually pass through the request for the MFA as well, and they're depending on the kind of site that it is, so it'll ask you to put in that code and
Right.
put in that code.
Mhm.
The
Exactly.
doing it with the push notification in some ways is a little more secure because it's not asking for code. You have to actively approve it, and it runs through a check, and it'll say things like, "Hey, were you logging in from here?" and recognize that you're not logging in from your
Right.
computer, it's logging in from wherever that phishing site is, and you're like, okay, no, that's not me.
Right.
Um, the
but as mentioned before, if you're
Mhm.
using the time-based one-time passwords, they couldn't reverse engineer your
Right.
cipher from giving them that number,
Right, you
whereas
get in that one
they just
time
get in that one time.
to be able to log in, but yeah, it's not a universal login. You can't use that to reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
the One of the things that I really like about the push notifications as well is through another tool called Duo Security.
Right.
And what we can do with this is use Duo as the MFA for multiple sites. So I was showing you I'm the Microsoft one of my watches, the Microsoft Authenticator. That only works for Microsoft. You can use other things for it if you're logging in with your Microsoft account. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have something that doesn't let you log in with your Microsoft account, and you want to add MFA to it, and they don't have their own MFA tool, but have a way to hook into to Duo or to a service like that, you can put that in place and use that to log in. Yeah,
Yes,
Andy, you're our favorite,
you
so.
are too. So, Matt, you threw that question up there. This is from a former Valiant, this great friend of Valiant, Andy Soderbergh, who works for a really big company right now. We don't want to blow a spot up, but hi, Andy. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And this is actually a really great question
Hello.
because I know he supports a lot of folks. What has your experience with customers been like in regards to Dash MFA and use of one-time passwords like this? How do you handle objections as it adds complexity to user experience? Marianne does it a lot.
I do, yeah.
So I'll give you that kind of my perspective of it. We really make the case for security. We demonstrate the value of it. We do this education here. We try to make it as easy as possible for them by using push notification versus one-time passwords. Um, Part of some of it's some of it's like a long tail battle. I mean, Justin, Marianne, what do you guys think?
Honestly, I mean, I do get pushed back a lot, but whenever I give a training, I always emphasize that, like, honestly, MFA, especially with these one-time passcodes, the setup is the most complicated part, and then
Right.
it's barely an inconvenience after that.
Mm-hmm.
So the setup is something that, because if you're a client of ours, we can help we can help walk you through it. First of all, we'll do
Right.
the trainings on it, and then you can also call in and get help to walk through each step. And we make a step-by-step process that we give you before the day that we're turning this whole thing on.
Mhm.
But I still get objections. People say that's too hard, it's too complicated. I have to do this every time. And really, part of it is training is important. And the other part is that it is still pretty flexible. Like, even though we really want to emphasize push notifications, which is probably one of the easiest ones. So, but if they really are like, I did have someone who was like, I don't have a smartphone. What are the options? And we're able to look at the different options, assess the risk, talk about the key players at that company about what the risks are and if this is okay.
Right.
So it is important that these things are flexible and we put in as much protection as we can,
Mhm.
and we do try and help as much as we can, because we're not just going to throw it at you and say turn this on. I mean, we're going to tell anyone who's listening to this now, turn it on.
Yeah.
But we have instructions. We actually do have instructions on our KB, and as a client, we do help people walk through them. So it is actually, when you have that assistance, it isn't as complex.
Right.
Yeah. And from the design and setup point of view, using enterprise systems, there's usually what's some level of some referred to as conditional access, where you can make rules about when MFA needs to prompt. And I know especially with Azure AD and Microsoft, if you have the right licensing for it, there is some AI behind that. So it's called, like risky logins. It will prompt for MFA and not on all of them. So you do things like, okay, the system is recognizing that George logs in from the office every day on Thursdays. So if he's logging in from the office on Thursday, that's from, his Surface on his browser, that's probably not a risky login. But if he's logging in, from the office on Thursday, but then 5 minutes later is logging in from China, that's probably not a good login. We should prompt that one for an MFA. So there's ways to cut down on do you have to use it every time? No, we can make it so that the system is somewhere in the middle. It is the most secure to always have it every single time, because then every single login is verified. But understand that not everything is like that.
The balance.
Yeah, I'd say the other big pushback that we've gotten in the past that now is less of an issue is people not wanting to give out their personal cell phone number, because it's for SMS or for things like that. It's great when you can use the app, because then you don't have to. There's no cell phone numbers. Just install this app. Just install this on on your machine. Use this. Time-based token key if you really like. Instead, if somebody doesn't have a cell phone or smartphone and doesn't want to use that, there's still an option for a hardware key. There's makes it more secure, makes it easier to use.
I think the other thing, from a different kind of organizational point of view, is most people at this point, especially their smartphone, they have a BYOD policy in place, and you can work with management and leadership to put together a fairly reasonable, as part of the BYOD policy, is like, hey, you need to have this. This is what the company's policy is at this point, and we can explain it. And once again, we don't like to jam anything down, jam it on someone, but it really is so critical. So I think when we were to do that pushback, we kind of go gently back to the company, our client's management, and say, and we haven't had that in quite some time. I feel like that was in the past thing as much as it was as nowadays. Everyone kind of accepts the fact that their smartphone is part of their overall work toolkit.
Sure.
So that's why it's out there. And as Justin says, and if someone really gives us should push back, go back to management and say, hey, there's the option. You can purchase this XYZ hardware token for Y dollars and do that. And quite honestly, I don't think we've sold any hardware tokens after we go back with the pricing. So everyone's kind of comes, okay, great, let's do what we're doing. Or they provide a phone for their staff. That's the other part. I've seen that where someone gets an iPad or a phone, that kind of thing, or some kind of device that they'll use just for work, which is also an option. You can provide your staff with a low cost tablet. That would be a totally viable option.
There's a lot of policies that you can put in place, because this is going to be part of your base policy. You need to have the security because it exponentially protects you. So then when you have objections, you can say, well, this is policy, let's make this work, and we can definitely work on that. Because it's just part of security best practices.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we thought this would be a short one, but it became a really good one. I want to say thank you to Stefan, and especially thank you to Andy. Hope you're out there in I don't know how sunny California is today, but I hope it's nice and sunny for you.
Sunnier than it is here.
Sunnier than it is here in New York. I don't know. We'll see about that. But just to kind of put it all together at the end here, one-time passwords totally improve security. It's like the best, lowest cost thing you can do to make your stance better. It has weaknesses. It can be breached, but once again, for every piece of armor, there's always a weapon that can defeat it. So we have to always constantly be balancing it, and also go it against the difficulty for adoption, and to make sure that they are using it and not trying to find ways to work around it. That's actually your bigger danger in some ways. So if people stop, if people, once again, if they have the password taped to the keyboard, that doesn't work, or a sticky note on the screen, that sort of thing. So we also we have together a promo for anyone alike. We do a free cybersecurity health checkup. Please email Emma Quick at thevaliantway.com. She'll schedule it with you. It's provided at no charge to anyone that would like to have it. We work through a series of give you a series of questions and some review, get you a great score to kind of show you where you are and some of the places you can improve either immediately in the longer term. And please, please, please keep in mind that cybersecurity is everyone's job in every company, everywhere, and you're only as good as the weakest link in your organization or your personal life. So please check out Cybersecurity Awareness Month at staysafeonline.org. It's a really critical thing. Cybersecurity is a multi-billion-dollar drag on our society. So we really want to make sure that we as good citizens and as people who want things to improve, to do our best parts, each one of us. So with that, check us out at thevaliantway.com. It has some really great content. There's some great KBs. There's some new uploads out there coming up around not only the cybersecurity checklists, but also around incident and breach response. We're always putting stuff there, so be a frequent check it out. And the other thing, we have a really great webinar next Thursday, same time as today. It's not on the live stream, but it's on a GoToWebinar. You have to sign up for it. There'll be some great content on that, and it'll be on our site. We'll also put some on social and on all our kind of channels. And so that'll be our identity management. We think identity management is like the future, and so not only for us, but for most big providers, identity management is where we're taking things to get secure, especially as we have this almost, how should we say, barrierless kind of environment. So we'll talk a lot about zero trust, identity management, the kind of underpinnings of identity management, and how we got here today. And beyond that, we have a really interesting, this continue our cybersecurity kind of thing, is the weak underbelly of cybersecurity, which is physical security. And that'll be on 10/22. We'll talk about kind of the intersection between cybersecurity and physical security, where they overlap, and we'll have some really great information on that and things that probably people don't know about it, and that can help improve your stance from day one. With that, Marianne, Justin, you guys got anything else, or?
No, just see you guys at the webinar next week.
Yeah,
we can't wait.
You can sign up at thevaliantway.com, or we also had a link ticking down at the bottom
there.
right there. So if you want to sign up for the webinar, hope to see you next week.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great week. Talk to you soon. Bye now.
Bye.